game 2 this evening is, for reasons a little bit unknown to me, the game is, of course, MindsEye. I'm thoroughly enjoying my time with it. I'm not suggesting it's up there with Expedition or Death Stranding or anything like that. But this game, from what I've played, is sitting at an 8 currently. Now, I've seen a fair share of bugs visually. The biggest visual bug that I'll ding them for is I go through, and I don't know about you, Bully, but when I play, the first thing I do is open the settings menu and tweak all the settings sliders and everything. And I go in there and I always disable motion blur. I always disable depth of field. The things visually or film grain if it's there. With this game, I went through, turned off all the visual elements I didn't like. I just want a clean, crisp picture. Save, quit, put the PlayStation to rest mode, came back the next day, turned it on, resumed the game. Then I'm like, this game looks horrible again. Oh, I'll go into the settings. All my settings have reverted back every time. And then I tested, I turned it off, suspend, start mode, came back. And sure enough, whatever visual settings you modified to your liking, when you relaunch the game, even straight out of suspend mode, like if you didn't quit it, just put it into rest mode, come back, keep playing, all the visual sliders have reverted. It's absolutely bizarre, such a bug. So I hope their development team have that one as their top ticket to fix in the coming days. But here's the high praise I want to give this game. This game, to me, is one of the best stories I've come across in a long time, with the caveat of we're talking, near future sci-fi, action adventure, like film narrative plot. This game's singing for me on all those levels. It's right up there with, and I know you love the Splinter Cell games, but I love the story of the Splinter Cell games. And this is what I'd compare this game to. Like, as much as I enjoyed the story in the Splinter Cell games, I'm enjoying the story in this game. I will finish this game before I get into Death Stranding 2, just because I've got to know how this story rolls out. Now, I want to dive into that a little more, but first I think we need to set the stage a little. I'm playing this on the PS5. Pro, obviously, and Bully, you've played it as well on the Pro?
Yeah, played it on the Pro as well. I suppose before we get into it, and I just wanted to clarify probably a conversation we were having on messages during the week. So when you talk about adjusting the settings, and I think what we were talking about was how it sort of looked, and the main point was that both of us have got an LG TV that can show the frame rate. So yours and mine were both showing a 60. I checked that. Unky seems to think it's running at 30. So, and I know you adjusted a lot of the settings. Was that just within game or on the TV itself that you adjusted those settings?
I'll start this by saying I spent 4 hours deep diving as much as I could. I was going through and changing everything. Like, I got the picture looking the way I like it in game. As I said, all those variables turned off. Depth of field, motion blur, all the rest of it. I kill all that because I just want the crispest image possible. And very much to your point, with the LG monitor, you hit the button and up comes, 60 frames a second. So I'm sitting there and playing. I'm like, this looks pretty good. This looks close to 60. I sent you guys a message and like, I heard this got dinged for a low frame rate, but I'm not seeing it. Unky came back with several counterpoints that were bang on. And one of these things he said was, go into your tally and just check out these specific settings. And that's when I dropped the 4 hours into it. And I went through arduously, if you can imagine me being really methodical about something, and I'd disable one setting, play a bit more of the game, disable the next setting, play a bit more of the game. And where I got to was, if you disable every LG nook and cranny, every feature they have available to help with the frame, kill them all, the game runs as reviewed by a lot of people dinking it for looking terrible at 30. I would assert that is made even worse if they are not, and I don't know how other people game, but for me, I'm always killing depth of field and motion blur because I can't stand that look. But it's my experience doing the test I was just talking about with the LG, all the LG sort of upscaling, AIing, frame, whatevering, with all those disabled, the game runs at 30, which looks atrocious as you'd expect a 30 frame to look. But if you add on top of that all those visual features that I don't like turned on, motion blurring, depth of field, etc., that 30 frame goes from horrible to atrocious. So if the default reviewers don't tweak those settings, or if maybe they did tweak the settings, but because the game is bugged at a fundamental level, that, they've put the system into rest mode and come back, and if they don't have the LG monitor that's doing all the extra work, That game it looks atrocious in that state. And so, sorry, I've belabored that point a bit too much. Basically, it can look horrible and runs at 30. But if you've got the right monitor and the right settings, the game is very, very easy on the eyes.
No, and I suppose that's the point I'm getting to, though, is so I think both of us had seen, and Unky was sort of holding off on playing it because of the reviews that had come through, and exactly that it was running terribly, the frame rate was choppy and all over the place. There was bugs in it, which admittedly there was on launch day. They put out a couple of patches since then. I played it close to launch and noticed a few things here and there, but since they've patched it and the latest patch came out a couple of days ago, I haven't noticed any bugs in it whatsoever. And just to your point there, where you like, I get it that not everyone can afford the Pro system, and they're potentially playing it on the base PS5. They might be playing on an older monitor or an old TV or whatever it is. But I was dumbfounded when I started hearing those and reading those reviews of how poor the quality of the game itself was for those specific reasons. And I was exactly the same. Mine's running at 60. And to me, I guess, how much weight do you put into when you're reviewing it is what you're provided with on the most basic of monitors that you're playing on, or if you've got something that's relatively new that has AI upscaling, that has all of the latest features into the actual monitor or the TV itself to push at up to 60, it runs well. It looks graphically, I haven't had an issue with the way it looks. I think it's actually quite not a bad looking game when it's running with all those additional AI features that the TV is pushing through. So again, I haven't. Look, I'll probably put 5 hours into it. I really haven't noticed any massive bugs. To me, it looks quite good. I'm with you. The story's interesting. There's a couple of little bits in the open world that I've sort of found are a bit sort of dreary, going from point A to point B. That like there's one point early on where you leave the sort of city area and then you go to this sort of deserted old factory sort of thing, and it takes you like real time, probably 4 or 5 minutes to get there, and it's just like it's a boring drive. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
And there's nothing sort of going on. They do try and temper it a little bit with some narrative coming through via phone calls and information and all the rest of it, but it's still a boring job. Like they need to, in my opinion, that's the one downfall with the game, is that they need to compress that downtime a little bit. And if they had, like, some of the action sequences are pretty good. The cover and shooting mechanics, from my point of view, are pretty good. Like that action stuff and actually playing the game, those elements are really good. It's the downtime and either driving or running or walking from point A to point B. That's where it lets itself down to a large degree. That you chop all of that out and just go from action to action to action. I think it could have been a much more compelling game.
I agree with you completely. To that point, Pully, I noticed one line of dialogue. This happened one time to me. I jumped in the car after a mission. I'm about the same as you. I think I'm 4.5 hours in off the top of my head. And I can't remember the name of the particular story mission I did. But once I got in the car at the end, it wasn't the end of the mission because it was to drive back to the headquarters you see on screen now. And that was the end of the mission. My character said, as I jumped into the car, is he talking to his lens or the car? Either way, he says the one line of dialogue that made it in the game that I think they meant to pull out was auto drive to whatever the name is, headquarters. Like he verbally calls out the auto drive. Wait. And what I think's happened is I think on their Dream Dock, originally they were all near future stuff and you just jump in the car and say it and it goes. And how many other games do you get in? Like even Red Dead Redemption do it. Like you get in the horse and cart and you plot your waypoint to the city and you can either sit there and watch the drive or you can skip the drive. I think they never got the auto drive working and they had the dialogue line recorded and it's in the game where it should be, but the prompt for skip the drive never comes up because they never finished the feature. Wild speculation, but what do you think of that?
I'd have to go and check it because I heard the same thing, but I heard Navigate 2.
Yeah, no, it does typically say Navigate 2's in it heaps, but there was one instance, I've got it on video so I can pull it up, not tonight, but I can go out and find it. But there's one instance where he says auto drive to headquarters.
Yeah, okay. And look, even that, if they had thrown that in there with the option to skip, it would have
I reckon that was on the docket and they ran out of time.
Yeah, it would have helped it as well. And it may that way will be the case, and it might be something they're working on in the background. We'll get to a story a bit later on which might sort of debunk that. But, to be honest, I think we spoke about it last week that it was one of the worst reviewed games for the year. This is nowhere near the worst game of the year.
No, it in no way deserves the heat it's got.
No.
I think so many people are off base. I don't understand where the criticisms are coming from.
No, neither do I. I don't think it's an A+, AAA, top tier experience. Like you said at the start, it's not Death Stranding, it's not Expedition 33. Like, we get that. I think the best way for me to compare it to is a sort of more modern version of a PS3, PS4 game, and that's not being critical in terms of the game itself. What I'm trying to say when I compare it to that is that third-person action type game that we saw a lot of in that era that we don't really get a lot of these days, and this is filling that void that I really enjoyed in that.
Can I pitch a game to you that I think fits the bill? Sorry, mate, I talked all over you. I missed that last sentence entirely.
No, I was just saying that for me fills the void of games that I really enjoyed in that era that we don't really get anymore. And they're very few and far between. So when you get one, I'm quite prepared to look through past some of the more obvious flaws with it to see the game that's underneath, because those games in that era were the vast majority of them weren't, mind-bending, amazing game of the year contenders, but they were good, solid action games with a half-decent story. This one's got a pretty good story, but half-decent stories. The action was good. It kept flowing. It kept going, and it kept you entertained for, sort of 15, 20, 25 hours. And this sort of, for me, fits that bill.
100%. Can I throw a game at you that I think is exactly what you just said? Spec Ops: The Line. Now, there's a chance some people aren't going to like me comparing this game to Spec Ops: The Line, but there is a whole heap of narrative I want to dive into where I can make the case, even though I haven't finished it. But Spec Ops: The Line, cover-based shooter.
Oh, just sorry to jump in. I'll just see on the screen there they're doing the CPR thing. My understanding, the latest patch has nixed that because so many people were failing it.
I enjoyed it. I put
didn't
it in
think it was that bad.
No,
I didn't think it was that bad.
I put in all the mini games I came across. The one where you're on the spy cam and you're positioning the sentry turrets. I put in the CPR. I put in the drone flying. All those little mini side things. I loved it. Anyway, but I don't know where the hate's coming from. And I really want to get to, so I want to do a deep dive now on narrative, and then I'm done with the game. Obviously, I'm saying for me it's sitting at an 8, but I haven't finished it yet. Do you have any final points you want to make before we really dive heavily into the narrative?
Oh, I suppose the only thing I'll say is, like, it's not. I get what you're saying when you compare it to Spec Ops. It's the reality is, I think there's a lot of rose-colored glasses with Spec Ops. The game itself is an okay third-person shooter. I think what everyone hangs their hat on is the story,
the narrative
itself, and the narrative arc towards the end of it. The game that you sort of realize what's going on and what's happening to the main character. So I think that's what a lot of people hang their hat and their memories of games like that on, rather than 90%. Okay, there's 10% of stories and cutscenes and all the rest of it, but 90% of it is just third-person cover-based shooting, which is this game. That's what this game is. So I find it really, and I suppose probably to a broader issue, I find it really difficult when you read a lot of, and it sort of goes to why I've checked out a lot with social media to a degree, because I find that people just want to complain about everything. Like, there's always something to complain about. You can never just be happy with it. So people are complaining that there's not enough games coming out, which I find bizarre. I think at last count,
ludicrous.
Last year there was 20,000 odd games. Now a lot of them are shovelware and nonsense, and we get all that. But there's never been any more games. There's never been a period of time that so many games are coming out, and at some point you'll find something that you will enjoy. And if you don't, maybe this hobby isn't for you anymore. I don't know. I just sort of, if you don't like this game, that's okay, but you don't need to rip it apart.
Yeah.
To the point of calling it the worst game of the year and etc. Because it's clearly not.
It's insane.
There's worse stuff coming out. If you don't like it, that's okay. Move on.
Yeah,
Find something else that you like.
I agree with you. Now, one of the complaints I flagged to Unky, and then he confirmed for me that people have been complaining about online, really dinging the game for this point. The point was this: you're in a Tesla, essentially, an electric car. And I pointed out to Unky, I'm like, I really don't get it. I'm in an electric car. I'm driving. It handles okay, it's a bit floaty, but it handles the way you'd expect an electric car would. Yet the audio that accompanies it includes gear shift, first, second, third. And I said to Unky, I'm like, that's ridiculous. I'm in an electric car. There are no gears. Why are we hearing gear shifts? And he commented back, oh, yeah, a lot of people have been dinging it for that online. And I'm like, oh, yeah, whatever. And then I played for another couple of hours and I was driving along and they actually discussed that very point in the game. It's your main bloke talking to the hacker and he says to her, he's like, why do all these cars make so much noise? And then she explains there was a whole backstory to it. There was a court case. Someone got ran over. They had to put loud noises on the cars to avoid lawsuits.
You know what? It's funny you mentioned that because I was walking through the car park of my local supermarket the other day. And I hear this sort of wispy, almost flute-like tone as I'm walking past these cars. And I look across, and it's an electric car that's about to reverse. And instead of having like a truck would with a loud, annoying beeping, that's the noise to let you know that the engine's on. Yeah. Not the driver, but for anyone else that's around, that the engine's on and it's about to move. So I don't see that as a massive issue because, like, if you're trying to make electric cars more enticing for people that are, car enthusiasts or whatever it is. I would say, well, throw those things in there that would make it a throwback to a, gear shifting V8 throbbing petrol car. You're never going to get that in an electric car, but you can have the gear shifting.
Yeah.
You can have the engine noises. You can have all of that.
As I understand it, Teslas can give you that sort of, deep V8 gear shifting sound if you like it. Haven't seen it myself, but apparently that's the thing. But what I was trying to get to, mate, was people have maybe played the first 40 minutes, hour of the game. I don't know how long you need to play or can play a game for on Steam before you can get a refund. But wild speculation again, if you paid for this game on Steam, played it for an hour, saw that, why would an electric car have gears? I'm going to go online and flame it and let's rally a whole heap of hate around how they can't get the sound effects of car right. When if you just had played it for another 3-4 hours, you would have found naturally in the game world why that was a thing. So, it's a great way to tell a story. You've made it prevalent enough that me, the gamer, without knowing anything, goes, oh, that's weird. And then 3 hours later, it just naturally gets revealed to you and you're like, oh, cool.
Yeah, but if that... it goes back to what I was saying before. If you're hanging your hat on criticising a game because an electric car sounds like it's got gears that are shifting... Like if that's your biggest gripe with what's going on, like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Like, really, this is the point we've got to where you're going to criticise piddly little things like that. That the reality is, I'll be honest with you, 5 hours in, I haven't even noticed it. I didn't even notice that there was gear shifting.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm more looking at the lighting effects and the reflective lighting on the car and the sandstorms that you drive through and the city that you drive through.
Sorry to interrupt, but speaking of the lighting effects, I know it's coming up there. Look at their shoes. They're standing in like this bathing light on the landing pad, and their shoes are so great. I thought it was awesome. Sorry for interrupting back.
No, but that's the stuff that I'm paying attention to.
Yeah,
the narrative that's coming through while you're driving the car is what I'm paying attention to. Not the fact that it's shifting gears. Like,
yeah.
I get breaking down games to that degree to some point, but if there's 10 things like that you're hanging your hat on to criticize it, like, really, are you actually paying attention to the main aspects and the main parts of the game? Like, I think it throws a lot of interesting things at it. And I said it last week, it's by no means the greatest game in the world, but there's something there.
It's an 8, and I'm dying to get into why I think it's an 8 and why I think it's going to go down the Spec Ops Stallone route. And in 3-4 years, people are going to be saying, I loved it on day one and everyone else was wrong.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see because, as I said, we've both discussed that the story, it's not something that hooks you in straight away, but there's certainly something there with the story to start with. And then once you start getting into it and working through, you get a bit of a background of the main character, you sort of work out what's going on and you go, there's actually a little bit in this. And I sort of want to see where this is going. It's not it's not the worst story in the world. There's plenty of games that I've played that you skip through cutscenes and dialogue because the gameplay is good, but the story's rubbish.
Absolutely. Now it's time. I think we're in a pretty good spot now. I'm going to dive headfirst into why I think this game is going to go down the Spec Ops the line. Notable game in history. Now, we've got a stand-up on tape. I don't think I've ever done a stand-up on tape during the show before, Bully. It's going to run for, I believe it's 23 seconds. And I just want the viewers and your good self, Bully, to pay particular attention to this course of dialogue. And then I'm going to drop on you why I think this game is Spec Ops line worthy. Are you ready, sir? All right, ears up. Here we go.
I hear you are on your way out to Redrock Plains as we speak.
Yeah, to watch and observe.
Right. And do you know what you're walking into?
They're criminals. It's a drop.
They're dangerous. You seem very calm.
Should I not be?
I just find that interesting.
That's enough of the science experiment, Okada.
All right. So, you heard that, everyone? Here's my suspicion. I don't know. I haven't read it. I haven't looked. As I said, 4.5 hours-ish into the game. I think that we're a Blade Runner. I honestly think the main character is an entire android. I think that bit on his neck is the, hey, I'm a robot. If you heard the dialogue they just said, old mate who's a scientist who was involved in the production of, and you hear it various times throughout the flashbacks, oh, we're working on a super robot project, super military stuff. You see in this opener bit here, you walk down the street and they've got police robots out. And then the main character asks his companion here, he says, oh, how do you feel about police officers being robots? And then he makes the offhanded comment, oh, they've taken every other job, why not police officers? So it's like leading you down this road of, well, okay, the police turn into robots. What if the military do? Which is what I think is. That's it right there. Police robot, give us your ID, blah. They were building a super robots project. And then, okay, hold on. So his mate here is telling him, he keeps telling him, oh, you remember when we did this in high school? You remember when we did that in high school? Remember when we were growing up, this happened? To me, that is, if you recall Total Recall, his friend on the construction site right at the start does the exact same thing. He's like, oh, remember when we did this? Remember when we did that? And then it's revealed later on, no, he only started handling it 2 weeks ago. He was a handler. I think that guy who gets in the job is a handler, and the guy who built the robot originally, who talks to him, the way he walks up to him and touches his neck is like he's not a human. He touches him the way you touch a robot, someone that's not a consciousness that you need to consider their personal space. On the way into combat, he points out, hey, you're very calm, aren't you? Yeah, why shouldn't I be? Because I'm a robot sent to kill people. I'm not going to be concerned. I honestly think the big reveal at the end of this game is going to be that you were playing as an android the whole time. And if that's the way it goes down, like Blade Runner is one of my favorite movies of all time. If this is essentially Blade Runner, the video game, that is why I'm saying, if that's the case, I'm swinging, and I'm taking a big swing here, I admit it. And I could be way wrong. I might be totally wrong. But if I'm right, Spec Ops the line material, I reckon.
No, and that's the thing as well. Like, you might be right, you might be wrong. I don't know. Well, you know, you'll have to go play through the game and find it out. But that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that there is a decent enough story behind it to keep you engaged and to keep you sort of going, okay, what happens next? I'm interested in that. You know, how does this next section play out? It's not a terrible story. Like,
no,
and the gameplay that goes with it, again, it's not top tier, 10 out of 10, mind-shattering game of the year sort of stuff, but it's decent enough to get you through to the next part of the storyline.
It's a double-A game with a kick-ass story.
And enjoyable enough to get you through the next part of the story.
Right here. Look at the way he touched him on the neck. Oh, yeah. Hey, you're not a human, you're a robot. Let me just invade your personal space here, but you're not a person, so you don't have any. Like, to me, it's all throughout the game. There's these little moments where and this bit on the thing, he's like, he says audibly, why does that robot have teeth? Because you have teeth, because you are that advanced version of the robot. I'll tell you who isn't advanced, me. See this game on screen here, the mini game in the office where you're searching for evidence?
Oh, I haven't done this one yet.
Well, I honestly thought I had to crack this encryption in order to get the evidence I needed to progress the story. I spent 10 minutes on this game until I'd mastered it, at which point I went, I think this is just a mini game that I've accidentally played and made an assumption of, and I get off the terminal, walk over, and then it kicks off the next cutscene. I'm like, oh, I'm a goose.
No,
Still,
well, I mean,
not a bad minesweeper.
and again, just before we sort of finish up, but you saw in that footage as well. If you paid attention, you can actually see it's like we've mentioned the car that you drive is Tesla like. You can see through the back windshield the large iPad sized screen in the center dash with your controls and stuff on it. Like, to go to that degree of putting that sort of stuff in there, it's not a throw a bit of money at something to make a quick cash turnaround and try and dupe people. They put time and effort into something that is relatively enjoyable. And again, it's not that there's a couple of issues with it, and I think we all acknowledge that. But it's not what is being purported out in the wider community to be.
Yeah, no, it's not. I don't know why they decided. Oh, sorry, final time. I don't know, I'm belaboring it. But there in the world, it's a glitch and you enter someone else's memory and then you come out of it and you go, I really feel like I was him. It's because you're playing an android's memory and you're an android. Like, no one else in the world can see those little pools because they're not an android. Like, it's just like, once again, I'm back to Total Recall. He keeps having the dreams of Mars, and they're like, you've never been to Mars. What are you talking about? You don't know that woman. You never had a relationship with her. No, he did. They were dreams. They were flashbacks.
Oh, see, that's how I sort of take it. I've sort of seen it maybe a little bit of a different point of view, is that it's RoboCop-esque, as in, he was a soldier, he was an actual human, that his brain's been transplanted into a robot or a cyborg. So what you're playing through is that these scenes and the flashbacks and all that sort of, that was him as a soldier.
Yeah, I think it was him as the robot soldier. I reckon it'll be like
as in a human.
No, I understand I understand what you're saying, but I'm saying it's gone the other way. It was either this particular unit, or they made, pick a number, 10 of them, 8 of them, and they all shared a consciousness, on the cloud. He's hitting these different points, and he's having the flashbacks to either himself or his brother robots that were these super soldiers that they invented and then disappeared from the map. Like, anyway, I can't wait to play it, and I've got to play through this game and find out whether I am, in fact, a Blade Runner.
Oh, that was luck. Hey, that's something. Oh! Old Uncle Donkey. Gee, Donkey.